Let me tell you something real, something deep. There are wounds that don't bleed. Wounds that don't show, but they cut deeper than any blade. They sit in the heart of a man, silent, still, and waiting to heal, if they ever do. You see, you can break a man's back and he'll stand again. You see, you can take his money and he'll earn it back. You can even leave him and he might move on. But when you speak words that belittle his soul, when you speak poison to his purpose, that's when you lose him. Not just his presence, but his spirit. A man might never say it. He might stay silent, nod, walk away, but those words will echo inside him like thunder in an empty house. You need to understand this. Men are not made of stone. They are made of scars, built from years of pressure, pain, and perseverance. Every man carries a hidden war. And sometimes what you say to him in one careless moment, it doesn't just hurt him, it changes how he sees himself. So listen closely now. There are 6 things you should never say to a man. Not if you love him. Not if you want to keep him. You're not a real man. That sentence right there, it can shatter a soul. It's said in anger, in frustration, sometimes even in silence, with a look that says more than words ever could. But what most people don't understand is that no man ever forgets those words. They don't just echo in his ears, they burn into his identity. You see, from the time a boy takes his first step, he's already being told who he's supposed to be. Strong, tough, fearless, emotionless. And then as he grows, every mistake he makes becomes another mark against him in the world's invisible scoreboard of manhood. So when someone he loves, someone he trusts, looks at him in disappointment and says, "You're not a real man," it's not just a jab. It's an erasure. It wipes away all the times he tried, all the times he stood up, all the silent battles he fought without asking for help. That phrase tells him he's failed not just in one moment, but in who he is. And once that seed is planted, it grows into shame. A shame that sits quietly in his chest, reminding him he's not enough, even when he's doing his best. What most people never realize is how hard it is for a man to define his manhood in a world constantly telling him he's not doing it right. Society screams at him to be a protector, a provider, a leader, and to never, ever show weakness. And when he falls short in just one area, suddenly his entire worth is on the line. Now imagine someone he deeply loves, someone who sees behind the mask, throws those 6 words in his face. That betrayal hits harder than any stranger's judgment. It doesn't matter how much he's done. It doesn't matter how many nights he stayed awake worrying about bills, or how many times he bit his tongue to avoid conflict. In that moment, everything collapses. Because to say you're not a real man is to say, I don't see your effort. I don't see your heart. I don't see you. And there's something about that kind of invisibility that's soul killing. You can heal from being disliked. You can get over someone being mad, but feeling unseen, feeling like your identity has been stripped from you, that kind of pain lingers long after the argument ends. It's a cruel irony, really, because most men will never tell you how much those words wounded them. They'll nod, walk away, pretend it didn't hurt. But deep inside, they're carrying that moment like a weight chained to their spirit. They'll replay it at night, over and over again. They'll start second-guessing themselves, wondering if maybe they really aren't good enough. Maybe they aren't real men. That doubt creeps in slowly. It changes how they talk, how they show up, how they love. They become more guarded, more silent, more distant. Not because they don't care, but because the place they once felt safe now feels like a courtroom where their worth is on trial. And every word, every sigh, every raised eyebrow becomes evidence against them. It's not easy to rebuild confidence after that. It's not easy to wake up and keep pushing forward when the person you would have taken a bullet for made you feel like less than a man. And yet, many still do. Quietly, silently, with their pain stitched behind a hardened face. The truth is, no man comes fully formed. He's not born knowing how to lead, how to love, how to protect. He learns through trial and error, through falling and rising, through watching the world and sometimes failing to understand it. And in that process, he makes mistakes. Big ones, But those mistakes don't make him less of a man. They make him human. See, manhood isn't a destination. It's a journey. A rugged, unpaved road filled with storms, losses, and heartbreaks. When you tell a man he's not real because he fell down, you ignore the courage it took for him to stand in the first place. You ignore the weight he's carried on his shoulders, silently, so others could feel secure. You ignore the thousands of moments where he chose love over pride, protection over ego, and endurance over escape. The problem is, too many people define manhood by what's visible: the job, the car, the bank account. But the real proof of a man is in how he treats the people he loves when no one is watching. How he keeps showing up even when he's tired, even when he's broken inside. Sometimes the man you accuse of not being real is the one holding himself together with tape and prayer. You don't see the pressure he's under, the expectations, the sleepless nights, the voice in his head telling him to be strong no matter what. You don't see how much it takes for him to smile when everything's falling apart. And yet, when he drops one ball, when he forgets one thing or loses one battle, he's suddenly not a real man. That's not fair. That's not love. That's judgment disguised as disappointment. And what it does is it teaches a man not to express himself. It teaches him to keep everything inside, to never ask for help, to bury his emotions beneath silence. Because why open up? Why share his fears if the risk is being told he's less than? That kind of isolation is dangerous. It leads to emotional death. It leads to a hardened heart. And once a man gets there, once he starts believing the lie that he's not enough, it's a long road back to healing. You want to see a man fall apart? Don't hit him. Don't leave him. Just make him feel worthless while he's trying his best. Make him feel like all his efforts are invisible. That's how you break a man without ever laying a hand on him. And the worst part, he'll never tell you. He'll carry it like a secret, smile through it, joke about it, but inside he's building a wall. A quiet wall. A wall that says, I'm not safe here. And once that wall is built, it doesn't come down easily. He stops sharing, stops trying, stops hoping. Not because he doesn't love you, but because he's convinced you'll never see him as enough. That phrase, "you're not a real man," becomes a curse he repeats to himself. And even if you apologize later, even if you say you didn't mean it, those words already left a scar, because in the heat of that moment, he saw what you truly thought of him. And some truths, or perceived truths, stick harder than any lie ever could. Real manhood isn't loud, it's not flashy. It doesn't walk into the room demanding attention. Real manhood is quiet strength. It's sacrificing dreams for others. It's standing tall when everything's crumbling. It's forgiving people who hurt you. It's working 2 jobs to feed a family. It's staying when it's easier to walk away. So when you call a man not real because he showed emotion, or because he failed one time, or because he couldn't be your version of a hero, you're not just criticizing his behavior. You're telling him his soul doesn't measure up. And that's the one thing a man struggles to forgive. Not because he's proud, not because he's stubborn, but because somewhere deep inside, he hoped you'd understand him, the way he hides his tears, the way he carries everyone's burdens, the way he wants so badly to feel worthy in your eyes. And when you reject that, it's not just pain, it's a heartbreak he carries forever. No matter how tough he looks on the outside, you'll never be enough. That's what the world keeps whispering over and over again, until that whisper becomes your inner voice. You start hearing it when you wake up in the morning and see yourself in the mirror. You hear it when your accomplishments don't get the recognition they deserve. You hear it when someone you love walks away without explanation, or worse, with reasons that make you question everything about yourself. It doesn't matter how hard you try, how far you go, how much you change, somehow that sentence keeps following you. It creeps into your relationships, your work, your sense of identity. It convinces you that every mistake you've made confirms it. And the more you try to silence it, the louder it gets. That voice doesn't just live in your head. It shapes your actions. It decides what risks you don't take. It convinces you not to speak up, not to love too deeply, not to dream too big. Because deep down, you're scared that the moment you do, someone's going to confirm what you already believe. That no matter how much you give, you're still not enough for them, for this world, or even for yourself. That feeling of not being enough often begins in silence. It starts when someone important to you withholds affection. When your father never says he's proud, when your mother only notices your flaws, when your friends only call when they need something. It's in those quiet moments that you begin to question your value. You begin measuring your worth based on how others treat you, not on who you truly are. And when people you love start pulling away, you don't ask what's wrong with them. You ask what's wrong with you. That's the trap. You internalize their behavior as a reflection of your worth. And over time, it builds up. You start second guessing every word you say, every choice you make, every part of yourself that once felt natural. You begin editing yourself in real time, trying to become who they might want, just to feel seen. But no matter how much you shift, they still leave. And so the conclusion becomes inevitable. Maybe it's not them. Maybe it's you. Maybe you were never meant to be enough in the first place. And the more you try, the more you confirm that deep-rooted lie. Every time you get close to someone, there's a part of you that hesitates. You hesitate not because you're afraid of love or connection, but because you've been taught repeatedly that the moment someone finds someone more exciting, more successful, more lovable, they'll leave. So you walk on eggshells, never too much, never too little, always trying to be exactly what they need. But in doing so, you lose yourself. You trade authenticity for acceptance. You shrink your light so others won't feel intimidated, hoping they'll stay. And even when they do stay, you don't feel secure because you don't believe you're worthy of permanence. So you wait. You wait for the other shoe to drop, for them to change, for the distance to creep in. You tell yourself it's only a matter of time before they realize what you already believe, that you're not enough to keep someone. That belief becomes a prophecy. It makes you act in ways you hate. Clinging too hard or pulling away too soon, not because you don't want to love, but because you're tired of hurting when love always seems to leave you behind. The pain of not feeling enough doesn't always come from failure. It comes from giving your best and still being overlooked. It comes from trying your hardest, putting your heart into something or someone and watching it fall apart anyway. That kind of rejection doesn't sting, it scars. Because it teaches you that even your best isn't good enough. So you begin to hold back. You lower your expectation. You start convincing yourself that if you don't try as hard, you won't hurt as much. But deep inside, you're grieving all the versions of yourself that gave everything and got nothing in return. You start resenting your own vulnerability. You resent the hope you used to carry, the passion you used to feel. And soon, you don't recognize yourself anymore. You become numb. Not because you don't care, but because you've cared too much and paid the price for it. And when people ask you what's wrong, you don't even know how to explain it. How do you explain the exhaustion that comes from never feeling like you're enough for anyone? Not for love, not for friendship, not even for peace. You tell yourself to be stronger, to stop feeling so deeply, to toughen up, because that's what people seem to respect. The ones who don't get too emotional, the ones who don't need anyone. So you try. You bury your pain under distractions. You smile when you want to scream. You keep showing up when all you want to do is hide, but the truth is pretending to be okay doesn't fix the wound. It only hides it. And sometimes that hurts even more because now you're alone with your thoughts, with no one seeing how much you're struggling. And the worst part? You're afraid that if you did let someone in, they'd just use your vulnerability against you. You've been there before. Opened up to someone only to have them walk away, or worse, use your pain as ammunition. So now your silence becomes your armor, but armor is heavy. And wearing it all the time only leaves you tired, disconnected, and aching to be understood. You don't want to be pitied. You don't want to be fixed. You just want someone to look at you, flawed, cracked, human, and say, you are enough, and truly mean it. The world is loud about what it thinks you should be. Be successful, but stay humble. Be strong, but don't be cold. Be vulnerable, but don't be weak. Be confident, but not arrogant. It's a constant contradiction. And when you try to meet all those expectations, you end up lost. You lose sight of who you are because your identity becomes a reaction to what others want. That's when the feeling of never being enough grows strongest. because you're chasing a standard that doesn't exist. You begin to wonder if you'll ever get it right, if there's a version of you that will finally satisfy everyone. But the truth is, even when you get close, they move the goalpost. They find a new flaw, a new thing to criticize, a new way to make you feel small. And somewhere along the way, you stop chasing your own joy. You stop asking yourself what you want, because all your energy goes into becoming enough for people who never truly saw you in the first place. It's not just draining, it's devastating. It steals your identity, your confidence, and your ability to believe that you're worthy of love without conditions. And yet here you are, still waking up, still trying, still hoping, even if it's buried under years of doubt. That says something about you. No matter how many times life told you you weren't enough, you didn't quit. You kept showing up, even with your heart bruised and your spirit tired. But the thing is, this pain you carry, this belief that you'll never measure up, it didn't start with you. Someone planted that lie a long time ago and it grew. But just because it's grown roots doesn't mean it's truth. You've been measuring your worth by people who couldn't even see their own, by standards built to keep you small. You've carried burdens that weren't yours, and now it's time to at least question that voice in your head, the one that says you're not enough. Ask it where it came from. Ask it whose voice it really is. Because the version of you that's still standing, still trying, still feeling, it deserves more than judgment. It deserves compassion. Not from the world, not from anyone else, but from you. Because maybe the person who needs to believe you're enough is you. Why can't you be more like that? Sentence is more than just a comparison. It's a wound disguised as advice. It stings in places you didn't even know could hurt. When someone says that to you, it doesn't feel like a suggestion. It feels like rejection. It tells you that who you are right now in this moment is not enough, not as good, not as worthy, not as lovable. And what hurts the most isn't just that someone said it, it's who said it. Maybe it came from a parent who never saw the beauty in your uniqueness. Maybe from a partner who never stopped chasing someone else's shadow. Maybe from a teacher who couldn't see past your quiet potential. And in that moment, comparison becomes a cage. Because from then on, every time you try to be yourself, there's this voice in the back of your mind reminding you, you're not them. You're not smart like her, not strong like him, not outgoing like them. And suddenly your identity becomes this exhausting, never-ending attempt to chase someone else's image, all while erasing your own. You begin to wear masks, not to hide your flaws, but to become someone they might finally accept. When that sentence gets repeated enough, you begin to internalize it. You start comparing yourself even when no one else is. You walk into rooms already shrinking yourself, already apologizing for your presence. You assume people expect someone better, someone louder, more accomplished, more polished, someone not you. And what's tragic is that you don't even realize you're doing it at first. It becomes second nature. You smile like they do. You talk like they want. You pick careers, relationships, even hobbies, not because you love them, but because maybe, just maybe, this version of you will be enough for someone. And the more you do it, the more disconnected you feel from your own soul. Because deep down, you miss you. You miss your quirks, your passions, your messy truth. But every time you try to go back to that version of yourself, you remember those words. Why can't you be more? And just like that, you abandon your authenticity all over again. Not because you want to, but because you're afraid that being yourself means being alone, unloved, or overlooked forever. There's a loneliness that comes with being constantly compared, a kind of isolation that even the loudest rooms can't fix. Because you're never fully seen, you're only seen through the lens of someone else. Every accomplishment you achieve feels like it belongs to a mold, not to you. Every compliment is laced with a condition. You're doing better just like her. And instead of feeling proud, you feel hollow because it wasn't you who got the praise. It was the version of you they wanted you to be. And when you fail or fall short, the comparisons get louder. They don't comfort you. They don't say you're human. They say, see, you should have been more like them. That's when shame creeps in. That's when you begin to believe that no matter how much you grow, it will never be enough. Because it's not about growth anymore. It's about becoming someone else entirely. And the worst part is, even if you manage to become who they wanted, you'll never be satisfied. Because you'll always know it wasn't really you they loved. It was the illusion they built from someone else's reflection. It starts to affect your relationships too. Because when you're constantly measured against someone else, you stop feeling safe. You stop believing in unconditional love. You begin to guard your heart, not to protect it from pain, but to protect it from being seen and rejected again. So you hide parts of yourself, the real parts, the sensitive parts, the ones you were told weren't good enough. You try to be the ideal instead of being real, and people think you're distant, cold, or hard to reach. But they don't know that you're just trying to survive in a world that keeps asking you to be someone else. You begin to overanalyze every word, every action. You study the way they behave, the one you're compared to. You try to mimic it, thinking that if you master their personality, maybe you'll finally be chosen, finally be celebrated. But instead, you lose your voice. Your laughter doesn't feel like your own anymore. Your dreams feel like hand-me-downs. And every time someone says, "Why can't you be more like," even if they don't mean to hurt you, it feels like another piece of your identity slipping away. There's also a quiet rage that builds inside you, because no matter how hard you try to change, no matter how many layers of yourself you shed to please others, it's never enough. There's always a new standard, a new comparison, a new someone you're supposed to resemble, and you start to resent them. Not just the people you're being compared to, but the ones doing the comparing. You begin to wonder if they ever really knew you, if they ever really wanted to, or if they were just searching for someone else and using you as a canvas to project it on. That kind of pain of being unseen, of being measured instead of embraced, it doesn't fade easily, it lingers. It becomes this silent fire that burns behind your smile. You pretend to be okay, you laugh at the right times, you even play the role they expect, but inside, you're screaming. Screaming to be enough just as you are. Screaming to be loved for your own rhythm, your own light, your own way of being. But instead of speaking that pain out loud, you bury it. Because the last time you were honest about who you were, someone looked you in the eye and said, "Why can't you be more like?" Eventually, it becomes a cycle you can't break. You meet new people, start new jobs, enter new seasons, but that voice follows you. It whispers when you're about to take a risk. It shouts when you make a mistake. It haunts you when you're finally proud of something, reminding you that someone else did it better. You could have the most beautiful moment and still find a reason to believe it's not as beautiful as theirs. That kind of mindset steals your joy. It poisons your self-esteem. It convinces you that your life is a constant competition and you're always one step behind. And you start to sabotage yourself. You push away good things because you don't think you deserve them. You reject love because you believe they'll eventually compare you to. You stop dreaming big because what's the point if you always fall short of someone else's example? And in that silence, in that fear, in that constant measuring of your worth, you begin to forget who you were before those words were ever said. Before you believed that being yourself was somehow a flaw that needed fixing. And the cruelest part of it all, most people don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're helping, motivating, just trying to bring out the best in you. But they don't see the damage left behind. They don't see the confidence shattered in the silence after those words are spoken. They don't see the countless nights you spent trying to figure out how to be someone you're not. They don't see the identity crisis, the imposter syndrome, the aching exhaustion of living your life in the shadow of someone else. They don't see that every time they say, "Why can't you be more like?" What you really hear is, "You'll never be enough unless you stop being you." And maybe the saddest part is, you started to believe them. You started to believe that your real self wasn't worth celebrating, that your flaws, your edges, your differences were something to fix, not embrace. But deep down, there's still a spark, a small, quiet reminder that you were never meant to be like them. You were meant to be you. Unapologetically, imperfectly, beautifully, you. I don't need you. Those 4 words may sound like strength, but when they're said in the heat of pain, they can echo like a scream through your entire soul. They're not just a statement. They're a wall, a sword, a goodbye wrapped in pride. When someone says, "I don't need you," it doesn't just close a chapter, it slams the book shut. It tells you that everything you were giving, everything you tried to be, suddenly didn't matter. And if you've ever heard those words from someone you love, someone you bent over backward to be there for, then you know the sting they carry. It's not just about them walking away. It's about them pretending you were never important to begin with. That's what burns. It's not the leaving, it's the erasing. Because when you give someone pieces of your heart, your time, your soul, and they turn around and say, I don't need you, what they're really saying is, you're replaceable. And even if you act like it doesn't bother you, even if you nod and say, okay, something in your chest cracks, something sacred becomes scarred. And suddenly, all the love you poured starts to feel like a mistake. But here's the truth that nobody says out loud. Most of the time, I don't need you is a lie. It's pride wearing a mask of power. It's fear pretending to be freedom. It's someone who feels too vulnerable, too exposed, too raw. And instead of saying, I'm scared, they say, I'm strong. Instead of saying, I'm hurting, they say, I don't need anyone. And we've all done it. We've all pushed away the people who tried to care because we didn't want to feel weak. We told ourselves we'd rather be alone than risk being let down again. And in that moment, we convinced ourselves that needing someone was the same as depending on them for survival. But needing someone isn't weakness. It's human. It's connection. It's admitting that your soul found comfort in someone else's presence. It doesn't mean you can't stand on your own. It means that standing with them felt better. So when people say, I don't need you, what they're often really saying is, I needed you so much, it terrified me, and that fear becomes silence, anger, distance, anything but truth. The problem is when you hear those words enough, you start believing them, not just about others, but about yourself. You begin to think maybe you were too much. Maybe your love was suffocating. Maybe your presence didn't add value, and you start to retreat. You start pulling back your heart in every room you walk into. You stop showing up fully. You give less, not because you want to, but because you're afraid of being told again that you're not needed. And little by little, you start to build walls too. Walls around your care, your effort, your vulnerability. Because you've learned that people don't always treasure it. They don't always stay. So you pretend you don't need anyone either. You smile with half your truth. You laugh through your loneliness. You post like everything's fine. But behind all of it, you miss what you're afraid to say out loud. You miss needing someone. You miss being needed. You miss that unspoken bond where two people look at each other and say, I'm here and I'm not leaving. And when that bond is broken, when someone throws, I don't need you in your face, it makes you question everything. Was it ever real? Did they ever mean the things they said? Was your connection just convenience? The overthinking starts to eat away at your peace. You replay conversations trying to find the moment things shifted. You blame yourself. Maybe if you were quieter, more understanding, more whatever, they wouldn't have left. But here's what you need to understand. People don't say, I don't need you because you weren't enough. They say it because they weren't ready. Not ready for real love. Not ready for honest connection. Not ready to be seen fully and still stay. And instead of facing that truth, they take the easy way out. They act cold, they shut you out, they walk away like nothing ever mattered, but deep down, they know they're lying. Because no one walks away from real love without feeling the loss. They just bury it, they numb it, and sometimes they don't realize the damage until it's too late. The most painful part is watching someone pretend you never mattered when you still carry every memory like it happened yesterday. You remember the conversations that changed you, the laughter that healed something broken, the moments you were absolutely sure that what you had was real. But when they say, I don't need you, it's like all of that disappears in an instant. It's a slap to everything you shared. And what's worse is when they say it in front of others trying to prove a point, trying to look strong. Like walking away from you was the best decision they ever made. And you just stand there, holding your broken heart with quiet dignity. Because you know you gave your all. You know your love was real, and no matter what they say now, they can't erase the truth. They can't rewrite the past. You were there when it mattered. You were there when they needed someone, but now they're rewriting the script, casting you as the forgettable one. And you're left with the silence, the questions, and the ache of knowing you were worth more than they ever admitted. But in that silence, something powerful begins to grow. Clarity. You start to see the difference between being needed and being used. You start to realize that being someone's emotional crutch is not the same as being someone they truly value. You begin to recognize your own patterns, how you've always tried to prove your worth through what you give, how you show up, how you never leave. And now you're learning that not everyone deserves that version of you. That love doesn't mean abandoning yourself to earn someone's approval. And maybe, just maybe, hearing "I don't need you" was the wake-up call you never asked for, but absolutely needed. Because now you're not chasing people who make you feel like a burden. You're no longer shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You're starting to see your own worth, not in how needed you are, but in how true you are to yourself. And that shift is hard. It's painful, but it's freeing. Because the moment you stop trying to be indispensable to the wrong people, you make space for the ones who see your value without needing to be convinced. And one day you'll look back at that moment when someone said, "I don't need you," and you won't feel pain. You'll feel gratitude. Because those words push you back to yourself. They stripped away your illusions. They reminded you that your worth isn't tied to anyone's inability to recognize it. You'll be stronger, not in the loud, ego-driven way, but in the quiet, unshakable way. The kind of strength that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. You'll stop overgiving. You'll stop begging for clarity. You'll stop waiting for apologies that were never coming. And you'll move forward with grace, not because you don't care anymore, but because you finally care about yourself just as much. You'll still love deeply, but you'll be wiser with your heart. You'll still show up, but only for those who meet you with equal presence. And most of all, you'll never again let someone's inability to see your worth convince you to doubt it. You'll remember that even when someone told you, "I don't need you," you kept loving, you kept standing. And that right there is your power. You're just like your father. When those words are thrown like a weapon, they cut deeper than 1,000 insults ever could, because they don't just point a finger at who you are, they dig into your blood, your history, your roots. For some, that sentence is a compliment, a badge of honor. But for many others, it's a curse, a judgment, a reminder of the pain they've spent their whole life trying to escape. Maybe your father wasn't there. Maybe he was, but never truly showed up for you. Maybe he was angry, distant, cold, or even cruel. So when someone looks you in the eyes and says, "You're just like your father," they're not simply comparing traits. They're resurrecting every wound you've tried to bury. They're telling you that no matter how hard you've worked, how far you've come, how different you tried to be, you're doomed to become what hurt you. And that's enough to shatter something inside. Because suddenly you're not fighting for your identity anymore. You're fighting not to be someone else's memory of pain. It's hard to explain how those words follow you. They echo in the back of your mind when you're angry, when you raise your voice, when you withdraw emotionally. You hear them when you're trying to do better but fall short. When you're triggered, when you shut down, you start questioning your every reaction. Was that me or was that him? Am I choosing this, or is this his shadow in me? And that fear starts to choke your growth. You hesitate to feel anger, to make mistakes, to stand firm, because any flaw could be used against you as proof that you're turning into him. And it doesn't matter how intentional you are, how much you try to break generational cycles. Once that sentence is said, it plants a seed of self-doubt that keeps growing. It makes you afraid of your own reflection. And what hurts the most is when it comes from someone you love. Someone who knows your past, someone who should understand how much you've tried to rise above the pain. The thing is, you never asked to carry his name. You never asked for his trauma, his mistakes, his silence. Yet people act like you're responsible for his sins. They forget you were just a child watching chaos, trying to make sense of it. They forget that while he was out hurting people, you were in your room crying, confused, praying that one day you'd be different. And still, when you slip, when you fall, when you react like any human would, they slap that label on you, and it stings. Because they're not just attacking your present, they're ignoring your struggle, your growth, your effort. They're saying your pain wasn't enough to make you different. That somehow the blood running through your veins cancels out the soul fighting within you. But that's not true. Because breaking cycles doesn't mean you never feel what he felt. It means you choose to respond differently even when it's hard. And that's the silent battle people don't see. The war you fight daily to become someone new. Sometimes what people call just like your father is really just their fear or disappointment projected onto you. They see your silence and call it coldness. They see your intensity and call it anger. But they don't see your heart pounding in your chest trying not to say the wrong thing. They don't see the therapy, the books, the deep breaths, the prayers. They don't see how hard you try to pause before reacting, how many nights you've cried, hoping you're not repeating what once broke you. And yet all of that is erased by a single sentence. It's like your growth doesn't matter, like your healing isn't visible enough to count. But here's the truth. People will always try to define you by where you come from, especially when they don't understand how much strength it takes to choose a different path. And if you've ever been compared to someone who hurt you, if you've ever been told you're just like them, know this. It says more about their inability to see your effort than it does about your character. And the damage doesn't stop with how you see yourself. It bleeds into your relationships. You start walking on eggshells, afraid to show any flaws. You start hiding parts of yourself, afraid that one misstep will confirm the worst fears others have about you. You may even start pushing people away, not because you don't love them, but because you don't trust yourself to love them right. And that isolation grows. Because no matter how much love you give, if people are always waiting for you to fail like he did, it wears you down. It makes you question if you're even capable of building something healthy. And you begin to resent people for not seeing your heart. You wonder why they can't separate your journey from your father's shadow, why your name, your face, your pain has to carry the weight of someone else's failures. And in that loneliness, it's easy to give up, to give in, to become what they said you were. Because sometimes the fight to be different feels so heavy that disappearing into the identity they gave you seems easier. But even when it's hard, even when the world tells you you're just like him, you've got to keep choosing differently. Not because you need to prove them wrong, but because you deserve to be free. You deserve to be your own man, not a reflection of someone else's brokenness. You deserve to love without fear, to feel without shame, to live without constantly checking yourself against his ghost. And yes, you'll mess up. You'll say things you regret. You'll make mistakes. But that doesn't mean you're him. That means you're human. And every time you catch yourself, every time you apologize, every time you choose a new way, you're breaking the cycle. You're creating a legacy that starts with you. And one day someone will look at you, not with fear, not with anger, but with pride. Because they'll see not just who you are, but how hard you fought to become him. Not again, but better. So when they say you're just like your father, let it remind you of how far you've come. Let it be the fire that fuels your healing, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in power. Because anyone can inherit pain. Anyone can pass down trauma. But it takes real courage to stop the cycle. To feel the anger and still speak with love. To remember the silence and still choose honesty. To face abandonment and still offer presence. That's strength. That's legacy. And no one can take that from you. Not their words, not their doubts, not their labels. You are not defined by where you come from. You are defined by where you choose to go. And every time you love when it's hard. Every time you show up when you want to run. Every time you become what you never had, you are rewriting your story. You are becoming the man your father never was. And that's powerful beyond words. When a man opens up, when he lowers the walls he's been told to keep up his whole life, he's handing you something rare, something fragile. He's giving you the unfiltered version of himself that the world rarely sees. And in that moment, silence can feel like a slap. It's not the absence of sound. It's the absence of acknowledgement, of presence, of care. For a man who's been taught to suppress, to endure, to be stoic, no matter what, speaking his truth takes courage, takes every ounce of strength he has to say, I'm not okay, or this hurts, or I need someone. And when that vulnerability is met with nothing, no comfort, no eye contact, no words, it doesn't just hurt, it confirms every fear he had about opening up. That maybe he should have stayed quiet. That maybe his emotions are too much. That maybe no one really cares. Men are often conditioned to believe that their value lies in their strength, in their ability to hold it all together. From a young age, many are told not to cry, not to feel too deeply, not to talk about what's going on inside. So when they finally do speak, when they finally let someone into their emotional world, it's not casual, it's not small. It's a breaking of a cycle, a silent rebellion against everything they were taught. And yet, if that moment is met with coldness or indifference, it reinforces every toxic belief they've been carrying, that their emotions are a burden, that nobody really wants to hear what they feel, that vulnerability will only be used against them. And so many retreat, not because they don't want connection, but because they've learned that silence, when they're vulnerable, is more painful than solitude. The truth is, silence in those moments doesn't just communicate disinterest, it communicates judgment. When a man shares something deeply personal and it's met with no reaction, he starts to wonder what you're thinking. Are you disappointed in him? Do you see him as weak now? Are you silently pulling away? The mind fills in the blanks, and usually not in gentle ways. That silence becomes a mirror reflecting his worst insecurities back at him. And even if your silence wasn't meant to be cruel, even if you just didn't know what to say, it still lands like rejection. Because when someone is bleeding emotionally, they don't need perfect words. They need presence. They need to know they're not alone in that moment, that someone sees them, hears them, and isn't afraid of the messy, complicated truth they just revealed. And when they don't get that, they shut down. They stop trying, not just with you, but with everyone. What makes it worse is that most men won't tell you that your silence hurt them. They won't follow up with, "I needed you to say something," because doing that would be another layer of vulnerability. So instead they pull back. They become quieter, shorter, colder. And you might think they're angry or distant for no reason, but in reality, they're nursing a wound they don't know how to explain. A wound that says, "I gave you the most honest part of me, and you left it unanswered." And the tragedy is that some relationships die not because of yelling or betrayal, but because of silence in the moments that mattered most. Because when someone opens the door to their heart and no one walks through, they often decide to lock it for good, not out of spite, but out of protection. It's easy to underestimate how much a man is carrying. On the outside, he might look calm, even stoic, but inside he could be waging wars you know nothing about. The expectations, the pressure, the fear of failure, it all builds up. And when he finally cracks open, when he finally says, "I can't do this alone," that's not weakness, that's strength. That's trust. That's him saying, "I believe you're safe enough to hold this with me." And how you respond in that moment can shape how he views himself, how he views you, how he views vulnerability as a whole. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to say all the right things. You just need to stay, to listen, to be with him in it. Because the silence that wounds the most isn't the silence of not knowing what to say. It's the silence of disappearing when he needed you present. And over time, repeated silence in the face of his vulnerability teaches him a dangerous lesson, that he must suffer quietly, that no one can handle his truth, that love comes with conditions. And one of those conditions is that he must always be strong. And so he becomes what the world asked him to be, the provider, the protector, the unshakable one. But inside, he's empty, he's lonely, he's afraid, and no one knows. Because when he did show that side, it was met with silence. And so he smiles more, jokes more, distracts more. He convinces everyone, including himself, that he's fine until he's not. Until the weight becomes too heavy. Until the silence inside him turns into a storm he can't escape. And by then, it's not just hard to reach him, it's hard to remind him that vulnerability was ever safe in the first place. So when a man gets vulnerable with you, when he drops the act and lets you see what's really going on beneath the surface, don't meet it with silence. Even if you don't understand everything he's feeling, even if it catches you off guard, respond with presence. Respond with grace. Because those moments are rare. And they are sacred. A man's vulnerability isn't something to be feared. It's something to be honored. It's not a sign that he's breaking. It's a sign that he's choosing you, trusting you, letting you into the part of himself that he spent his whole life guarding. And how you handle that moment, it could be the difference between healing and shutting down, between deeper connection and emotional isolation, between love that grows and love that dies quietly. Silence can be many things. But when he's vulnerable, let it never be the response he remembers. When a man chooses to open up, when he lays down the shield he's been carrying for years, it's not a moment to overlook. It's a moment to hold with care. He's not asking for perfection. He's not expecting you to solve everything. All he wants is to be seen, to be heard, and to feel that his emotions are just as valid as anyone else's. The silence that follows his vulnerability doesn't feel like peace. It feels like abandonment. And abandonment, especially in a moment of raw honesty, can cut deeper than any spoken word. It whispers to him that his feelings are too much, that his truth is too heavy, and that perhaps he was foolish to share it in the first place. That's not just emotional neglect, it's emotional damage. Too often, we mistake a man's strength as an indicator that he doesn't need support, that he doesn't cry, that he doesn't feel deeply. But beneath that strong exterior, he's human. He struggles. He doubts himself. He longs for connection just like anyone else. And when that connection is broken in his most vulnerable moments, it leaves scars he rarely talks about. He may not tell you he's hurting. He may not know how to express it, but it shows in his distance, in his silence, in the way he starts to pull away slowly, quietly, and permanently. The truth is, we all want to be loved for who we are at our core, not just for the parts of us that are easy, polished, or convenient. A man deserves that same grace. He deserves to be able to say, I'm not okay, without fear of being judged or dismissed. He deserves someone who doesn't vanish emotionally when the conversation gets real. What he needs in those moments is compassion, not correction. Presence, not perfection. And most importantly, reassurance that opening up doesn't make him less of a man. It makes him more human. Let this be a reminder, a call to be better, to love more deeply, to listen more intently. Sometimes it's not the grand gestures that matter most, it's the small, quiet ones. A hand on his shoulder, a nod of understanding, a simple, I'm here with you. Those are the moments that heal. Those are the moments that stay with him long after the words have faded. And those are the moments that give a man the courage to stay open, to stay real, to stay present in love. Thank you for being here, for listening, for choosing growth over comfort. Let's be the kind of people who make others feel safe in their truth. Let's not meet vulnerability with silence, but with strength, warmth, and grace. God bless you. Take care of one another, and never forget, the way you show up when someone is hurting says more about your heart than 1,000 words ever could.